Okay, so let's get to some good news, and I do mean some. Because abortion was on the ballot in 10 states, and it was a mixed bag. Some states enshrined reproductive rights into their constitution, others did not. So let's go to the rundown. Instead of starting from the beginning of the article, I'll just do the rundown. So let's start with Missouri. In a dramatic shift, Missouri voters have approved a measure to legalize abortion up to the point of viability, around 24 weeks of pregnancy. Missouri was the first state to ban abortion after Roe v. Wade was overturned, a ban that did not include an exception for rape or incest. I think that was just a bridge too far, even for a state that voted for Donald Trump by a wide margin, says Jason Rosenbaum of St. Louis Public Radio. Right, because again, as Ohio showed us, this isn't a partisan issue. And so it's great that, they're following the best practices of medicine. I mean, in a perfect world, this wouldn't even be legislated. Doctors would just be allowed to be doctors. So, let's keep going. Let's move on to South Dakota. Like Missouri, South Dakota has one of the strictest abortion bans in the country, with no exceptions for health, rape, or incest. That remains the case. A ballot proposal in South Dakota would have allowed abortions in the first trimester, but progressively restricted them as pregnancy progressed. Lee Strubinger of South Dakota Public Broadcasting notes that anti-abortion groups called the proposal too extreme, but local Planned Parenthood groups didn't support the ballot measure either. It failed to pass. Which makes me wonder, how was this phrased that even Planned Parenthood didn't support the measure? So that tells me it wasn't so much about allowing abortion. There must have been something else in the way it was worded, because that's just weird. I mean, obviously that's not good enough what the proposal was for, but at least it would have allowed something. Anyway, I should mention we're now in Florida. A similar ballot measure in Florida also failed. The state currently bans abortion after 6 weeks, a very narrow window of time. Yeah, most women don't even know they're pregnant, so very narrow. The ballot initiative presented to voters would have amended the state constitution to allow abortion up to the point of fetal viability. It required 60% approval to pass, a high bar. It fell short with 57% of voters backing it, a majority, but not big enough to change the state's laws. So, the Republicans in Ohio tried this. They tried to make it that a referendum could only pass with 60% of the vote. And they tried to pass that as a referendum, and Ohioans said, we're not doing that. And because they knew that this was to make it harder to pass a reproductive rights measure. And so Florida has that, so 57% was not enough. All right, moving on to New York. Abortion is legal in the state, and voters have now passed an amendment that bans discrimination due to sex, including sexual orientation, gender identity, gender expression, pregnancy outcomes, and reproductive health care and autonomy. So basically, back in, say, like in the 50s, when women could get fired just for the crime of being pregnant, they couldn't do that under this. Plus, they couldn't. You can't discriminate them discriminate against women for having miscarriages, or in this case, for having an abortion. I mean, you might not personally like them for their decisions that they make, which is perfectly fine, but you can't actually discriminate against them. All right, Maryland. Abortion, already legal in Maryland, now is constitutionally protected. And in Colorado is already a regional hub for abortion access. Colorado Public Radio's Bente Birkeland reports. The amendment approved by voters would codify current legal protections and also allow the state to provide public funding, like Medicaid and state employee health insurance coverage for abortions. And in Nevada, state law protects the rights to an abortion for the first 24 weeks. Voters have now approved a constitutional amendment to codify that right into the Constitution, but it won't go into effect unless voters approve the ballot initiative again in 2026. Hopefully, the winds will remain the same in that regard. Voters approved a ballot measure in Arizona that enshrines abortion rights in the state constitution, undoing a law banning abortions after the 15th week of pregnancy that the state had enforced since 2022. Now the state's constitution will be amended to guarantee abortion access up to the point of fetal viability. So that's good to know. Good to see. Nebraska voters chose to back the state's 12-week abortion ban over a competing proposal to allow abortion until fetal viability. Either the ballot initiative was worded wonky, or people don't know the difference. Because it's different to say 24 weeks versus 12 weeks. It's instead of fetal viability, because that makes it sound much more reasonable. All right. The ballot measure banning abortions in second and third trimesters, with some exceptions, is bound for the state constitution. It also allows lawmakers to further restrict abortion access. It was the only state where voters faced two competing proposals, which probably didn't help. I mean, it probably confused voters as to which one is correct. They probably thought 12 weeks was reasonable and that 24 weeks was probably too long. If you had mentioned that for the 24-week one that it's fetal viability, that might have actually helped that second ballot initiative. And finally, in Montana, voters approved a ballot initiative that solidified existing abortion rights into its state constitution. Under the new amendment, the Montana Constitution will explicitly prohibit the government from burdening the right to abortion before fetal viability. All right. So, that I'm going to skip the rest of these. So yeah, it's a mixed bag. Most states approved some form of reproductive rights. Most states went to fetal viability, which makes the most freaking sense, because okay, great. In theory, the mother dies because, they needed an abortion, didn't get one, but for some reason the fetus survived, and you want to, help it survive. If it hasn't hit fetal viability, how exactly is it supposed to do that? So it makes sense that it should wait till fetal viability. It just makes the most sense. And just because people are like, but there's a heartbeat. No, there isn't. It potentially could be one, but it's not. So, yeah, until the fetus is viable, I do not see why people are pearl clutching at the prospect of someone having an abortion. Because it has nothing to do with you. I mean, if the baby can't survive outside the womb, then I don't see how that is helpful at all. But anyway, with that is all I have for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.